Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on today's live stream. It's been a little bit challenging today, but only a very small way, mainly because I suddenly found a Chrome extension wasn't working quite as expected. But anyway, with technology is a wonderful thing when it all works. And what's fantastic, we've got a great guest on today by the name of Philip Lingard, who's all the way from Malta. So welcome, Philip. And we've got the lovely Miro. Yeah, thank you very much. Those of you joining in as we speak, if you could very kindly introduce yourselves in the chat and also confirm which channel you're on, whether it's YouTube, Facebook or Twitter, and also whether sound and video is okay. I think Miro's having trouble logging into Facebook at the moment to actually confirm it. So if you could just confirm all is good, that'd be absolutely brilliant. So with that in mind, a little bit of an introduction, first of all, in terms of the points that we're going to cover today. We're going to be discussing with Philip questions around the imperative perpetual learning, why we need to be continually learning, why heartfulness, mindfulness and wellness matters, how technological change impacts our lives, what is systems thinking, and why active project management is crucial to running your business. So some really good points here, and there's a little bit of a fun session as well. With Philip a bit later on, we'll be debating this whole area of blockchain and also Internet 3. So areas of which, of course, it's all stretching our imaginations at the moment, but we've got massive disruption and potential coming down the line, so it's going to be really interesting. So Miro, have you got some confirmation on the feeds? Have you been able to establish that the feeds are okay?
Yeah, all three are working great.
Right, okay, brilliant. Okay, lovely. So sort of moving forwards a little bit from there, what would be really good is if in the chat you could very kindly indicate what you're really passionate about and why you do it, and also be bold with your questions as well. Okay, so we do like to have lots of interaction. It means we can give a lot more back to you. And, at the end of the day, we're all motivated by a sense of why and how we can make a difference. So Renato, welcome. Thank you very much for your comments in the chat. And yes, Renato has got a massive brain. So his whole subject about cranial sacral therapy and alternative medicine is an interesting one, and thank you very much for your offers of support there, Renato, as well. Then moving on a little bit from there, what I'd just like to do is give a very quick introduction about Business Growth Bureau, but fundamentally we are here for you, our members, and we love supporting our members. We do want to see wealth much more evenly distributed as a result of the pandemic. What has tended to happen is the ultra wealthy have got even more wealthy. Probably the vast majority of people who've in any way been impacted by COVID, unfortunately, it's ended up a little bit the other way around. So if we can put things in place to help people to be much more successful in business, but also help to redistribute the wealth by different means, then that's really good. So we want to see you to feel that Business Growth Bureau is really here with a sense of social purpose to make a difference. I personally founded Business Growth Bureau about 7 years ago, and that's a consequence I had with the CEO of a charity, which led to a whole catalyst or chain of events that occurred. And one of the things I personally feel that's really important is that when building relationships, we think of all the stakeholders that we work with. So even with, for example, associates and suppliers and so on, you might not expect them necessarily to be stakeholders per se, but in reality, if you look at all the individual relationships, look at how you can make people feel good about interacting with you, and the other way around, then you're building truly on a circular relationship and also an economy potentially. So Miro, could you very kindly give us a little bit of a very quick introduction into yourself, if that's okay?
Yeah, of course. Like Rupert, I do enjoy working with people, speaking to people. I love helping them to achieve their goals, really, whether it be through business or their personal life. I love the interaction and developing friendships.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. And we'll come to Philip in just a moment or two, if that's all right. Also, doesn't pick up on David. David, welcome today. It was lovely seeing you yesterday. And apparently David is also really interested in cryptocurrencies generally and understanding blockchain. So we'll be touching on that a little bit at the end, which will be interesting. And in terms of what we like to provide to our clients, we like to help people in these main 7 areas. And it's all about helping people to put in place strategies to amplify their brand, bring their sales forward, and get their time back. And if that could be tied in with what we class the social selling blueprints around lead generation, prospect nurturing, sales optimization, then that's a really good thing to do. Now, what I'd like to do now is introduce Philip properly to you. I've had the great privilege of getting to know Philip over the last year or so, and we've had numerous conversations, and I've never ceased to be amazed by Philip's level of knowledge and expertise. And I think, Philip, what would be really nice is, could you give us a little bit of an introduction into you, what you're really passionate about at a personal level, first of all, and how that's very much related to, in terms of what you're actually doing now. Would you be okay to give a little bit of an introduction in that regard?
Yes, certainly, Rupert, and hello, Miro, as well. Yeah, I'm, as you mentioned, I'm here in Malta, and it's 37 degrees, so I might be mopping my brow from time to time. It's no reflection on any hostility in the questioning.
Not help, because you had to close your window to stop the noise coming hitting the microphone. It's not helped, is it?
Indeed. Yes. And also, I hope you didn't pick it up, but there's a powerboat depot just behind me, and they just revved up their engines. So anyway, they're off somewhere over the Med somewhere now. Yeah. My background, I'm economist, chartered accountant, was Shell's return and revenue tax accountant, and then really the fundamental change in my life was age 29. I self-funded to go to INSEAD to do an MBA, and that, as I say, was a total revelation in terms of being with people from all over the world, and what I learned and what I achieved at that time, and really gave me a passport to turn my hand to anything in a business sense. So I came back to the UK. I was a general manager in ICL, running 2 of their manufacturing plants. Then I was very fortunate, started on an EdTech, very early pioneering education technology company. And we floated that on the NASDAQ in '94. And the reason why we went to the NASDAQ was that nobody in the UK, nobody in London, understood what the heck education technology was, but we were the 6th EdTech to be floated on the NASDAQ. I mean, following on from that, I had the conceit that I could be a serial entrepreneur, which was a very expensive mistake. And then I was headhunted to come to Malta. To be CEO of an incubator in the telecom space. And I fell in love with the country, and it was great for my health and everything else. And I've been here for 19 years.
Wow. So it's a lovely place, Malta, as well. And I've got these memories still of actually sailing into Malta. I think it was one of these cruise ships actually years ago. And it's just like one massive, is it Valletta? Valletta, yeah. Valletta, yeah. It's like literally sailing into, almost looks like a series of massive sandcastles, aren't you? So it's very, very beautiful. So, and from what I understand as well, Malta is interesting, isn't it? Because it's become a bit of a centre for business. So in the last 10 years or so, am I correct in saying it's actually become a pretty prosperous country?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, we've been in our growth rate for the last 8 years prior to COVID was averaging 7-8% per annum. So the economy pretty well doubled. And to be honest, I mean, this is a terrible thing to say, so I better be careful how I phrase it, but we were overheating when COVID struck. So that has taken the froth off the property market, and it's enabled us to rebalance. But the government finances were in incredible state, very, very good state. I mean, we're talking about a 40% debt GDP ratio, current account surpluses. And so it means even after COVID, and government has had the most generous schemes in the whole of the EU, it's still in a 60% debt ratio. So the country's in a very great shape. But I mean, that said, I mean, today we're all reeling because the report of the public inquiry into the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia has been published. And I mean, look, I knew Daphne, I mean, but it's a small country. Obviously, we've had some terrible times. And you know, quite extraordinary, the Labour government has totally reinvented itself. It's flushed out an awful lot of the people who were involved. But even so, the report by the 3 judges is beyond dramatic. I mean, you know, I've spent, instead of preparing for this, I spent all afternoon with my jaw on the floor, literally, reading the report. It's you know, and it includes a paragraph which is the most damning statement about a politician. That's about Joseph Muscat, the former prime minister, that I've ever read about any politician.
Right, and this obviously is all confined to Malta in particular, is it, or is it?
Yes, I mean, obviously, you know, Daphne's murder was an international event, and it catapulted the country into attention. But I think it is the maturity of this tiny country of 500,000 people that a report of this caliber has been produced, and we've been capable of doing that. And we've been able to completely renew our government and our institutions in a very short period of time.
Yeah, thank you for that.
It's amazing. You know.
Yeah, I thought what would be quite nice as well, if that's all right, Philip, is I'd love to understand a lot more in terms of, well, I think you and I have had numerous discussions about it, but obviously you've got involved with the formation of a college stroke educational establishment, and that journey's been very interesting, to put it politely, hasn't it? And you've got some big challenges that are being facing, but also some big opportunities. And then this leads really nicely, and after that, into the topic about the imperativeness of perpetual learning, as it were. But can you just give us a very quick intro in terms of what you're also working on at the moment, and what you expect, where you're expecting that to head over the next 12 months?
Yeah, the main project is we're setting up a foundation or pathway college, which is to help children between school and university, because many international students, their English is not quite good enough. They don't have Western study skills, so they're not ready to be successes at Western universities, and also their basic knowledge is not up to scratch. And from that foundation, we have developed a series of modules which we found British universities extremely excited about. And in fact, 3 universities are asking us to teach their first year bachelor courses here in Malta on their behalf. And also, one of the things which, as I mentioned, the INSEAD was a pivotal time for me. And so, you know, we want to give back. And we want our students to experience a transformational year with us, you know, and a year which they will always very, very fondly remember. Nice. So it's much more than that. And it's because we want to do more than just simply the academics that we have got into this area of, okay, let's teach these youngsters something for life.
Yeah,
and that's what we're going to be talking about in terms of the imperative of learning.
Yeah, no, lovely. I think it's really interesting because you would obviously be a bit careful what I say, because some things you probably said to me in confidence. But obviously, I think you were explaining before we went on air that a lot of the universities and colleges, generally in the United Kingdom and in other continents like Australia, are in financially quite a bad place, and also, of course, it's affected tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of students as well. Yeah, and rather than focusing too much on the negative on that, which I know you wouldn't do, but could you just very briefly outline a couple of the challenges being faced, and also where possibly some of the opportunities lie, for moving forwards in that space? How obviously it seems to me that what you're setting up in Malta is highly progressive. How are you going to use it? Sorry?
We hope so.
yeah. So could you just touch on that for a minute as well, if that's okay?
Yes, certainly, because what we're doing is we're saying, look, obviously they need to get their English up to a level where they're accepted for entrance into any Anglophone university. And that's UK, Canada, America, Australia, and also many European universities now teach in English exclusively. And so where we're trying to add is to enable these youngsters to really achieve four things. One is that they are able to have the skills and the strength in themselves to be able to come through bad times.
Yes.
And that's where the heartfulness and the wellness comes from. The second is that technology is forever changing. And obviously this element of it is going to change year by year because of the speed of change. But we're going to focus on the blockchain and the implications of the blockchain, particularly the sociology of what the blockchain is going to do to us all. The third thing is very, very important, which is that they are going to go on to university and inevitably they're going to be very narrow focus. They're going to be their subject. But the world is massive in terms of complexity and interconnectivity. And there are tools you can use in terms of systems thinking to be able to try and make sense of what is going on and how things work with each other. And then finally, it's simply, and it's something which is taught on MBAs, and I think should be taught as basic education, which is project management.
Mm. Yeah.
All of life is a series of projects. Mm. You know, and there are a bunch of things in terms of basic project management skills, which I think you can apply to every aspect of life and every aspect of running a business.
Yes.
So that's what we're looking to bring in. Now, because we're doing that, we've got plenty of investors wanting to invest in us, and many of them are wanting us to do executive education short courses, which we will be doing. And we will be also, because Malta has a very progressive, very good regime within the European higher education area for recognition of courses. We will be getting able to recognize in terms of ECTSs, which are credits, which are, the UK is still part of the European higher education area, by the way, so it's not left out. So we'll be doing that, doing a series of recognition processes for people who can bring their courses to us. We get them accredited, and we can also teach them. And then the final thing is that they're asking, okay, if you're doing that, then why don't you also bolt on an incubator alongside? And so we'll be adding an incubator alongside. So there's internships with the students, there's academics who can support the incubatees, and hopefully we create a great synergistic force, particularly in the areas which we're interested in. So blockchain, you know, and also sustainability is very, very important.
No, thank you very much, Philip. Well, right, we're going to drill down on some of these topics in just a moment. But Miro, could you very kindly just pick out a couple of comments that come in on the chat as well? And obviously, just to slightly reiterate, those of you who perhaps just joined us on the live stream, do please feel free to introduce yourself, say hello. We'd love engagement, so do be prepared to ask us questions. Philip told me that he loves difficult questions, which of course he didn't say, but it makes it much more lively if there's a few nice little nuggets to really bite into. So, Miro, any sort of feedback or comments that we could be worth?
Renato, really, yeah, he said that for him, most important in Seed was the group of fellow students you were part of learning together, and hence how much more you got from each other.
Very much so. INSEAD.
INSEAD.
Yeah, INSEAD, yeah. It's the world's #1 business school. And Absolutely. The way that INSEAD works is, and it's something we will be doing at our college, is it puts people together on the basis of maximum incompatibility. So, yeah, so they design the groups that you are not going to, you are going to be working with people who you have no linkage to at all. And this is because it is such a transformational course. You're going through a phenomenal journey, incredibly intensively together, and you create lifelong friendships. And as Renato said, you learn so much from each other, quite apart from the prof, and all your own personal researches.
So it's interesting that, isn't it? Because do you find when people start to go on those type of courses, the very early stages, that a lot of the students get very frustrated because they can't quite understand where they're being married up in this way, and the actual learning comes a bit further on in the development when people start to really see them blossom, or not?
No. I mean, in the case of INSEAD, not at all. I mean, also, well, this is going to sound a little bit conceited, but obviously it's unbelievably difficult to get in. So you are surrounded by people who are massively intelligent and far brighter than you are. So, and they say right up front what they're doing. So
yes.
Yeah, there's no mystery about why you're sitting with a Dutch lawyer, a Japanese engineer, a Swedish evangelical Christian computer whiz. In my case, those are the things. So you it's a group of people who know how to hit the ground running.
Okay.
And you do. You don't have a chance not to hit the ground running.
No, yeah. I suppose everyone's there with the same aim.
We'll be looking to do that with our college. I think that you've got to set the pace right from the get-go.
Yeah, no, lovely. Thank you.
The other one is, weeks have gone by and you haven't started.
Yeah. And it ends up becomes a discussion all about nothing, doesn't it? So you've just got to focus on getting it done. Right, so let's get to the meat of this real interview today. Obviously, this information already you've shared, Philip's been really interesting. But under the subject of the imperative and perpetual learning, you sort of talk a lot about the need for continually learning around all this as well. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that and tell me what you mean by that?
Well, look, I mean, it's a truism that the world is changing all the time. I mean, I prefer the way that Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada put it. He said that today is the last day in history that the world will have changed so slowly.
Wow.
It's a different way of thinking about it. That, it's never going to be this slow ever again. And I think that because everything is changing so dramatically and so quickly, then you have no option but to be learning all the time. And I'll throw out a statistic to you, which is quite a couple of statistics, which I found are quite surprising. 90% of everybody who in history has ever earned a BSc degree is alive today.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, absolutely. So if you're wondering why technology is accelerating, there's a hint. And then the second thing is very personal to me. 2011-12, I had the great pleasure of creating an MBA course. Right, now I did my MBA at INSEAD in 86. And of course, that has been my passport to the world and got me into everything, trouble, good things and everything ever since. And then there I am creating this course, and I realized that since I did my MBA at INSEAD, 95% of all the management papers ever written have been written since I did my MBA.
Good grief.
Right, so that really brings it home.
Yes.
Just how rapidly the world is changing. And of course, right now, we are in a time of extraordinary change because of COVID. You know, COVID has now gone on for 18 months. It means that whatever normal is doesn't exist. We're not going back to the world of December 2019. We've become too accustomed to whatever this is we're in. And so there are two things which are the consequences of this. The first is that one of the things which is the slowest to change is society. That usually society is the laggard, and it only changes as a result of huge pressures. But because we're in this period of extraordinary upheaval and restrictions and going online and everything, society, I think, in many ways now is probably leading the change. None of us know where that's going, whether it's working from home, new forms of relationships, buying all our groceries online. Apparently 50% of all British retail is now online. That's up from 10% in 2019, 15% in 2019. So those huge changes. So societally we're changing, but also technologically, this has, everybody says it, that, we've got a decade's advance in a year.
Yeah, yeah.
We've seen this in the mRNA vaccines, and they are, the COVID vaccine is just the start. A huge amount of things. Medical advance is going to be phenomenal as a result.
Where do you see some of the biggest advances in that? It's a matter of interest.
Well, in terms of mRNA, I think
the medical advances.
Well, I think anything which is a virus you're going to have a vaccine against it, because the mRNA technology is proven. So it's just a matter of working your way through all the viruses. So HIV, for instance, that will be cured. The cancer-causing viruses, things like hepatitis, which at the moment are incurable, HPV, those I fully expect within 5 years we will have cures for all that, and moreover, it won't be, it's just inevitable.
No. Yeah, it's interesting, that whole subject. I've said I want to go off the main point here, but it's really interesting, the whole subject of vaccines, because they're saying, obviously, unfortunately, this whole thing is going to probably mutate and we'll get other variants, which won't be very pleasant. But my understanding is that whereas something might have taken a year to 5 years to develop before, because they'll be able to tweak largely what's already been created, they'll be able to release it potentially within a couple of months of
absolutely.
The time. Which obviously is staggering, isn't it? Because that typically would have taken perhaps 2 years before, and the whole whole thing around it. So
the whole clinical trials and approval system is going to have to change.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the regulatory system is going to be holding everything back.
Yeah.
I think the other area where we're going to see utterly dramatic change is in energy, batteries. My forecast, my central forecast, by 2025, in hydrocarbons will be cost ineffective. All of them
will be cost. Say that again.
Cost ineffective. Basically, solar and hydrogen will be cheaper, and this is going to save the world in climate change. That we will see that technology in that area will overtake us.
Right.
And and one of the things is that, which when I come onto the system thing, but I'll deal with it now, is that you start putting these fantastic technologies together. Now, let me give you an example. At the moment, everyone uses lithium-ion batteries, right? Lithium is number 3 in the periodic table. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, right? Okay. And then you look down the column, there are other metals. I think there's a metal, I may be wrong, somebody's going to howl at me. There are others down the helium column. Sorry, down the lithium column. Now, they also have the same capability as lithium, but far, far more so, because they're much more complex atoms, much less stable atoms, and something like rubidium, which is actually, I never knew this, is the 16th most common element in the world. That potentially is lithium on steroids.
Really?
The reason why we don't know how to do it is that the maths are so massively complex. Existing computer power would never work out how to charge rubidium. However, with quantum computing, which is now happening, when you put that problem into a quantum computer, where instead of ones and zeros, you have arrays of fours, then we know that mathematical problem will be solved in the next 18 months.
Yeah.
And when that happens, we're not scouring the earth for lithium, we're then looking for rubidium, of which there's a huge amount in North America, incidentally. And then we have a totally different set of economics for batteries.
Wow.
And so, already solar power is built and designed for massive surpluses. All those surpluses will go straight into batteries.
Right. That's interesting.
And to be honest, you will treat energy like water.
It really, I mean, that's a very dramatic thing to say. And as a point of interest, would that compound? Well, as I was going to ask, because lithium is regarded as being actually quite, dirty in many ways, because it causes all sorts of issues over disposal. So with rubidium, I can't remember the name of the drug. I think the drug. Sorry, compound.
I'm no material scientist. I'm no chemist.
But is that got the same? Is it as harmful to the environment as lithium is, for example?
I think inevitably there will be downsides. You don't know. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Yes,
but I don't know what they are. All I know is I saw this, and very few people are focusing on it. But that is potentially the future of battery technology.
Wow!
And that's something which is going to be relative around the corner. But you've got to apply quantum computing to it. And one of the things that I talk to AI specialists or blockchain specialists or quantum specialists, you say, okay, well, are you applying that to AI, or are you applying? And they look at me like I'm mad.
Really?
But the reality is when you start bringing these unbelievable technologies and bring them together, we are going to see, I believe, in this decade, the most extraordinary explosion. And
wow.
to be honest, it was that combination of thinking which has enabled the mRNA vaccines. I was listening to how they came about. They were using technologies which were 20 years old. Papers written in the 1990s. And it was that brilliant Turkish couple in Germany who cracked it.
Wow. God, that's fascinating. So what's really interesting with this whole topic, because the third point on today's thing is about how technological change impacts our lives. And I think we sort of got really good examples of that. So just touch you on battery technologies for a moment longer. I was having this debate with someone else whether, there's been, for example, I think I would say this is in public knowledge, so I don't think anything that's confidential, but obviously it was about 8-10 years ago, or 10-15 years ago, the governments were trying to encourage people to drive diesel cars. And there was tax breaks for diesel cars, all this type of stuff. Next thing along, of course, comes Volkswagen Gate, as it were. And then obviously we found several of the other car manufacturers were at it as well, which obviously totally discredited a lot of diesel technology as well. And then, of course, there's the whole thing now about moving everything to make it much more friendly to the environment and reducing our carbon footprint. And obviously battery technology is coming along and leaps and bounds. But then the only thing with that, of course, is moving the CO2 emissions more to the power stations. And then, of course, that's where obviously solar helps to compensate, because then it's a clean fuel. So you very much believe in the future of battery technology? You don't think it'll be hydrogen, for example, with cars looking 10 years ahead? You think it'll be some of these other interesting compounds? I think, what's fascinating is that Dieselgate is possibly the best thing which has ever happened, because it has forced the car manufacturers to look to new technologies. Right. Volkswagen is totally focused on being number one battery. Yeah. Toyota is going in a totally different direction. They're going fuel cells
and hybrid. And chances are they're both right. And I could well see situations that we have a multiplicity of different sources. I mean, for instance, I think we're getting close to viable liquid hydrogen. And for instance, a cruise liner it makes the same amount of emissions at 80,000 private cars.
Really?
The maritime industry, everyone's goes on about planes. The maritime industry, unbelievably dirty, and they're burning the dirtiest of dirty bunker oil too. So I think we will see probably hydrogen technology applied to the maritime sector. I think battery technology potentially for personal mobility, mixture of things in terms of heavy commercials. But because of this competition of different technologies and different manufacturers, I think this is going to drive these remarkable changes.
Wow. God, this is mind-blowing stuff, Philip. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And I think we'll do this slightly out of order, but I think at the end of the day, it's a really interesting topic. This whole area around systems thinking, how does systems thinking tie in with a lot of what we've already discussed now, and really what next with that?
Well, look, it's a case of systems thinking, and I've just given examples of bringing sources and elements of knowledge together and seeing how they potentially can interact and deliver something fantastic from it. I think that the reality, as I've said, everything is interconnected. And what systems thinking gives you a set of tools and techniques for seeing the world as a series of systems, and then analyzing those systems, and then seeing how each one impacts on the other. And the opportunities coming out of this is that you can see the big picture. There's no longer a need to curl a bit into a little ball and say it's all too complicated. It gives you a tool for dealing with the massive complexity and the uncertainties around you, and to understand that there are implications beyond your decision for yourself, for your family, for your business, and that these things are going to impact elsewhere. And this interconnectedness is the benefit of using systems thinking. I mean, I'm putting it very simplistically here, but that's the essence of systems thinking. It's that we can no longer ignore the world out there, because the world out there is coming to us. And COVID is an absolute prime example.
Yeah, quite. Yes. So it's very interesting. So it's systems thinking, isn't it? One of these terms, though, that if whoever you speak to, everyone's definition of what systems thinking is different. Yeah. And what are the different types of systems thinking that could be? Can you give us some quick examples of that and what that looks like?
Well, look, what I would do is say that in terms of system thinking, it's your ability to analyze how a process works, and then thinking in terms of how that process interacts with another. Yes. Look, Rupert, you're absolutely right, and I'm deliberately dodging the question. For the very simple reason that it does begin to get, as you're right, theological and philosophical. And to be honest, it's one of the things where there's no right answer, because there are so many different tools.
Yes.
So it's a matter of having a tool set which you sort of pull out and you say, well, does this tool apply in these sets of circumstances? You have systems thinking in the extreme is the old hoary story of the butterfly in Brazil setting off a monsoon in India. That everything has a consequence and a reaction and a counter reaction.
Right.
So I prefer to look at it more in terms of what happens when something rubs up against something else.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so what are the consequences and what are the implications? And what is that going to do? So if you're thinking, systemically as a business, okay, I'm going to tweak this feature on a customer, right? And there's somebody over there. I'll give you a classic example, right? And you're going to hoot with laughter with this one. In my auditor days, I did a medical devices manufacturer. And one of the things they made was colostomy bags. And the largest size colostomy bags sold in Ireland.
Really?
Ireland took by far the most of these. And I thought, well, what the hell's going on? And they were being bought for storage of potatoes.
You're joking.
Right. Now,
Oh, that's funny.
Now, suppose they say, well, we're going to drop that size of colostomy bag. Suddenly half the Irish potato crops going.
Oh dear. Oh, that's the most exotic answer I could possibly even thought of. So
there are unforeseen. That's the sort of thing where, all right, it's a silly example, but that is the sort of thing where you've got to look at first of all the implications, but also look for the potential implications.
Yes. Yeah.
Because somebody in Ireland first sold a colostomy bag to a farmer.
Right.
Probably because he needed it.
Oh, that's really funny, isn't it? Philip, what we're going to do, if it's all right, for the benefit of everyone else joining, Miro, Miro's trying to monitor the chat behind the scenes. Miro, in a minute, I'll perhaps bring you in and just ask you to refeed through a couple of the questions or comments, if that's okay. What I'm going to do is do a very quick 2 or 3 minute summary that we normally do at the end, because what I want to do is just catch up on some of those questions or points that people have made. But also, there's another part which we've sort of missed about heartfulness, mindfulness, and wellness. And also, I know several people are interested about hearing about blockchain and the Internet 3 in terms of what's to come. And Philip is pretty knowledgeable in these sort of general areas, so not setting up for a fall there, Philip. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in my screen, just this for a second, if that's okay. So we've been discussing these points, and I'll come back to you in a second, Philip and Miro. Just give me a second. I've got the one screen jumping over the top of another. In terms of what next, in terms of working with us, for those of you who are not familiar with what we do, once a month now on Thursdays, we run the monthly live streams, which is always the last Thursday of each month. And if you want to book those, you just simply choose free events on the drop down and then choose monthly live streams. So you'll be able to book there. Also, you're very welcome, if you haven't taken part before, in joining us in the Wealth Growth Club and the Business Growth Club. And you can join each one of those sessions once for free. And we've started running these about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They proved really popular. We are limiting each one to 10 people. So if there isn't space, then just jump in the following week. Make sure you register in advance if you can. The other part around what we do is we love helping people very much to encourage a giver's gain mindset. Now, stealing the phrase from BNI, but actually those two words mean quite a bit, because if we can think about how we can give to other people, what tends to happen is it comes back to us in spades. We also want to actually help people to spread wealth, and there is a way you can actually create gains of about 3 to 5% per week. Sorry about that. And also be very much here to help you to develop and grow your business. And we've found a way how we can actually help you to come on board as a full client and give you back potentially your entire investment in 18 to 24 months. So in addition to what we class as a total satisfaction guarantee, we so very much recognize that running a business can be a very lonely journey or an experience, whether you're a company of 1 or a company of 1,000. And also, we want to be here for your long-term development and growth. In terms of being able to interact with myself and Miro, and also Philip as well, you'll notice that Philip has very kindly shared his email address there, which is philip.lingard@gmail.com. And probably your best bet, because I know the university or college is opening next year. It's had to delay because of COVID and bringing students. What would probably best thing to do is reach out to Philip directly by that email address, or by all means contact us and we can put you directly in touch. Obviously, I'm very grateful for everyone joining today. Now, what we'll do is we'll come back to Philip again now. So just bear me a second so we get back to how we were. Miro, feedback, comments from the chat. Could you very kindly?
Yeah, Renato put a really nice comment when we were talking about working together and INSEAD. Is that correct, Philip?
INSEAD, yep.
Yeah. He's actually put a good example of how Rupert brings people together, interaction.
That's very sweet.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Right, David Davies has asked, how do you think decentralization finance will progress?
That's a nice seed question. Thank you for that, David. Over to you, Philip, on that one.
I think, look, I think in everything I'm going to say about blockchain is that it will progress. Now, who will do it is a different issue. Now, at the moment, DeFi is very much the young entrepreneurs coming up with all kinds of brilliant ideas and products and concepts. Some succeed, some don't. And very often, if they progress, then the way they progress is by selling that service or that product or that idea to an old-fashioned bank, an old-fashioned financial services institution. So we might not recognize it as DeFi, is what I'm really driving at, in that DeFi services will be offered, I think, by everybody. And that we will have a whole panoply of offerings. But I think it's utterly inevitable. It's just going to happen.
So, Philip,
just down to the bottle.
So just to clarify, because obviously what happens, it almost becomes a different language than the whole blockchain type space, especially it's moving so fast. Do you class DeFi as like decentralized finance?
Yes.
Or,
yeah, that's what DeFi stands for.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to touch on something here, which I just think is very interesting, because this whole thing around blockchain and cryptocurrencies and all these other areas is what I've been staggered about is how countries are starting to change. So I think you're talking about 2 countries now are starting to accept Bitcoin as legal tender, if I got that correct. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Then you're getting the battle as well, which is ensuing between different governments trying to set up their own form of crypto, but more centralized, if I've got this correct. So like the US government, and I think the British government, they're going to nickname it Bitcoin, I believe. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, my understanding is one of the whole reasons you'd want to use perhaps blockchain and some of these crypto variants, which sits on top of that. But Philip, you're going to correct me on all of this, I get this wrong, is the fact that people liked the fact that things were decentralized because it meant that no one government had control. And of course, you're then now seeing governments trying to gain control of the whole thing and doing the whole variants of this. And then all the disruption in the finance sector, where perhaps you've got the FCA in some ways embracing it and the government embracing it, in other ways becoming more hostile to it. So related to all of that and blockchain, what the hell is going on? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities, I guess?
All right. Well, first of all, I must hasten that I am no blockchain expert. I can't program to save my life. So please, this is my take on it. Yeah. But I think in terms of decentralization and centralization, you really have a technology which goes across the polarities. Now, the first thing which I want to do is say, well, what is blockchain? Blockchain is distributed ledgers. And so, in other words, at the moment, if I write something in chat, that's effectively going on a single ledger, which is shared between me and all of you, right? What the blockchain does is it posts that to any number of places of computers all over the world, so in such a way that you cannot get into that and change it. So blockchain records are immutable. That immutability creates a whole host of implications.
Just describe the word immutability.
Immutability means it can't be changed.
Okay.
It's
So
utterly unchangeable.
It can't be hacked by governments or...
Well, no, that's not right. No, what it means is that if I put something onto a distributed ledger, I say Rupert is a wonderful man, right? It goes on there and it's there forever. It is forever recorded that Philip Lingard said that Rupert is a wonderful man, right? Now, that means that if we start thinking about how this works, for instance, I sell you something. It is absolutely recorded, and there's no way you can change it, that I sold this pen to you for £1. That record is there. So, how much is this pen worth? I don't need a valuer. I don't need a notary. I don't need a lawyer. Right? It's recorded. I sold it to you for £1. So, you're seeing that this distributed ledger begins to do a number of very interesting things in terms of destroying the value of intermediaries who value things, who authenticate things, because we're not needing it anymore because the authentication is there. It's recorded, right? Then the next thing is, let's say you and I want to set up a company. Right. The way that we do it traditionally is we go and get lawyers and we go down to a company's house, memorandum and articles of association. And before we know where we are, we spent maybe £5,000 just simply to get a bunch of paper. Now, instead, let's do a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. Right. So we use the latest generation of blockchain, something like Polkadot or even Ethereum, right? These are the things which are replacing Bitcoin, by the way, because the technology has moved on. Bitcoin is old technology, right? Now, so what we do is we create a token, right? And we're only linked to each other by a token. We still go ahead, we do our business, right? And you, Rupert, you do a fantastic job, okay, right? And we both agree, right, you're worth 9 tokens. And I do a little bit, and I'm worth 2 tokens, right? And then eventually we create something of value, and those tokens, I'm sorry, the powerboats are setting up again. Those tokens eventually become worth something, right? And that belief that it's going to become worth something is what gives value to the tokens between ourselves. But we set up a company or an entity and doing things which has no place, no legal entity, no legal persona. It just exists. Now, let me give you an example. One of my friends has set up one of these DAOs. There are 1,500 people in it all around the world, right? And they're all linked by awarding each other their tokens. And they're achieving extraordinary things in terms of programming and development of product. And they're going out and they're saying, okay, there are people out there who are looking to invest in DAOs. So the first investment of $1 million is worth so many coins. The next investment, $2 million, same number of coins. Next investment, $4 million, same number of coins. $8 million, same number of coins. They've raised 8 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1 $1 million.
Wow.
And it doesn't exist.
No.
They simply issued tokens.
No. It's interesting.
You think how fast that has gone and how quickly that has happened. That is an example of way over on this side, decentralization. Now, come over to the other side in China. There you have a permissioned blockchain. Government is controlling all the servers, all the ledgers. They see everything, right? the control of society in China is being facilitated by the blockchain. That's why 60% of all blockchain patents are Chinese. And what's happening in China is you are having blockchain enterprises, the size of which will blow your brains. And just as, you know, Alibaba and TikTok suddenly emerge out of nowhere, these giant corporate, you know, from inside the Chinese firewall, we're going to see Chinese blockchain companies come out. Wow. And dominate the world. I mean, for instance, I mean, a friend of mine is putting all the personal medical records in China onto the blockchain. He's done 220 million. He's going up to 840 million personal medical records.
Wow.
Right. He's commercializing that. Remembering this is China, so you don't get to say whether you're part of a clinical trial or not.
You just become the experiment.
The whole medical insurance industry is basically on that blockchain exchange.
Good, great.
Now imagine if he takes that technology to America.
Yeah, go on, Bennett. That's absolutely mind-blowing, isn't it? And I think what's fun, interesting, which is almost the complete opposite of what you described, is if, for example, and I can't quite remember the numbers, so people correct me if I'm wrong. But if you look at, if you go to a bank and borrow £500,000 to buy a house, for example, for a mortgage, the bank actually doesn't have to have the £500,000. No. It doesn't even have to have the savers' money to be able to do it, because apart from about 5 or 6%, which the bank does have to hold, the other 95% is actually artificially created because they've got a license from the government to do so.
Exactly.
And what they then do, so they create the £500,000, of which, excuse the maths again, for 450,000 is actually made up money. It doesn't exist. They've got license to make it, for which they'll then charge you interest on money that actually officially doesn't exist. So that blew my mind. When I heard that 4 or 5 years ago, I thought, where the hell has that come from? And yeah, it's the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world, if you include the pension system in the UK as well, which actually is a similar thing. It's actually amazing. The whole banking system is built on that worldwide. I believe.
And of course, government finances as well. And you know, quantitative easing is all bullshit money. Actually, one of the things driving crypto is that people can see that fiat, which is, you know, a nice way of talking bullshit money, is potentially very vulnerable, because because of the amount of creation of credit which has gone on, particularly in the last God knows, dozen years. And so, what is going to be more value? Something where you have an endless printing press, or something like the tokens and Bitcoin, where it is determined by a mathematical formula. I mean, that's the genius of the Satoshi paper, which is only 8 pages long, which is set out Bitcoin. It's only 8 pages. But effectively, there is scarcity. There is a limit. And so, you know, we ascribe value to things. We ascribe value to gold. You know, gold is very good for use in certain conductivity, but the reality is the price of gold bears no relation to its actual physical utility. Again. And so this is why very often people are talking about blockchain as being the third iteration of internet, and this third iteration of internet is the internet of value.
Oh, wow. That's a good definition. Internet of value. And is that also known as Internet 3? Because I've heard this phrase being backed around.
Yeah. You know, I think, you know, just as, remember, everyone got very excited about cloud computing, that you can either have it on your server or in the cloud, right? Nobody talks about the cloud now. It's there. Right? You know, no, it's no longer an issue. And I think equally the term blockchain will drop out of use because it will simply be the way we do things.
Right.
Actually, I don't know if we've got time, Rupert, but David Davies has said Argentina are pushing a bill through their Senate to allow people to be paid in Bitcoin because of the weakness of the Argentinian dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And also, I think another comment.
San Salvador has done the same.
Yeah, David Davis made a comment as well, trying to read it properly here, but the biggest joke was people trying to launder money using Bitcoin, which an immutable blockchain that anyone can read.
Exactly. Yeah, David's got it in wrong. And in fact, recently, 850 American doctors were arrested in one night because they had been illegally prescribing opioids, and they'd been paid in Bitcoin. And of course, you know, the police, you know, they're now discovering all this money laundering and dark web and everything is totally penetratable. You can penetrate it. You can find it. So there's a day of reckoning for all the people who thought that they were being very clever, and were, because they've created immutable records. Remember.
Right. Yes, it's interesting.
Unchangeable record. You can't go in and change it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm just going to finish on one quick last point, because we also try and wrap up the next minute or so, because I've officially gone over time. And tell me if you think I've got this wrong. And it's a slightly risky statement to go and say, but obviously in the UK, there's been a lot of action on some of the biggest cryptocurrency exchange in the world, i.e. Binance.
Yeah.
Now, as a point of interest, I also had heard that information had been requested by the authorities over all the activities that Binance had been doing. What I'm very curious to know, and it's one of these things where it can be very cleverly sort of buried, is whether that's also going to include all the transaction data to do with all the money that's actually exchanged in and out of the platform. Because obviously up to now, under the Know Your Customer rules, they have to record who's putting money into a platform such as Bitcoin. So does it mean that possibly governments, speaking generally here, actually can get information through the back door about investments? And if so, should people perhaps have been doing things they shouldn't have been doing on using cryptocurrencies, or perfectly legitimately doing things? Is this got the potential to unravel a little bit? That's the question.
I think undoubtedly so. I mean, actually, when that announcement of those arrests in America happened, Bitcoin dropped in value.
Yeah, it's been happening over here, I believe, as well, which is interesting.
Look, it is true. Binance, incidentally, were going to headquarter themselves in Malta at one time. They're now totally out of here. They didn't get a license. And in fact, government is suing them.
Right. I think is it the Italian government is suing them, aren't they? And
well, the Maltese is.
Right. We're not joining the fray. Oh wow. Yeah, I think the thing is, what's quite frightening actually is the way now that states are starting to really intervene with some of this. I think in some ways it has to be done, but on the other hand, supposedly in the UK law we're protected by rules of data protection. But I think it's also an issue here where rules get broken when it happens to suit respective governments. So, perhaps they've got a license to do it. But here are we as mere mortals actually daring to question the system. But that's another matter. So
my view is this: that if you are pursuing a legitimate business, which I assume we all are, then these technologies are going to help you immensely. They're going to reduce your cost of doing business. They're going to give you much more access to doing different types of business. And if you work on the basis of being a tax-paying citizen, then you have nothing to fear from them.
Yeah.
And I think progressively, it's always going to be a race between the technologists and the bad guys against the good guys. It's always been, whether it was cops and robbers, and it's just simply it's updated to the 21st century.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people who use the dark web, and use Bitcoin as their means of transaction have probably got some very nasty surprises coming.
Right.
And I also think, I'll just throw this in, I think Bitcoin is old technology. You know, the way I think things like Polkadot and Ethereum are far, far better. They're far less energy intensive. So I think that, you know, Bitcoin will be a residue of value. And obviously because of its, but I think the race is run for me, so far as Bitcoin is concerned. That, you know, Elon Musk said he was going to buy $1 billion's worth and then didn't. I think that the smart institutions will be investing in things like Ethereum and you know, the sort of 5,000
of it. Yeah.
The 5,000 other coins out there, and that then becomes a totally new academic business way of doing things. That you basically got to get a PhD in coins, you know, to work out which one's a scam and which one might go somewhere.
Yeah.
Bitcoin was basically crypto for lazy people.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Well, let's be frank, Philip, I have to say I'm very grateful for you being a very active contributor to today's live stream. I knew we would be full of lots of information and surprises with Philip, because although he's incredibly modest in a whole range of different ways, you've got a great reservoir of knowledge and expertise, which you know, really appreciate and value. Yeah, exactly. And what I would also just like to say is also thank you to those of you who've contributed today in the chat. You know, the David Davis, the Renatos, and anyone else who's contributed today. We're here because we want to share value with you. So, and I know Philip shares a similar mindset to that. So, can I just thank everyone for being here? Obviously, if you want to reach out to myself and Miro, please do. Equally, Philip, you've got Philip's email address, or if you can't remember that, then just kindly message me or Miro, and we'll make sure that message gets passed on to Philip, so you can both speak. So, Philip, any sort of closing comments you want to say before we let everyone go?
Well, I would just say be curious. You know, anybody who's in business now has to have 360-degree vision, and part of that includes formal learning and informal learning. You know, both sides. So, you know, read prodigiously, or you know, in your industry and around your industry. There are free webinars on everything and anything. You know, make use of these things, and you know, just as you're doing with this session, you know, it's the old John Donne, you know, no man is an island unique upon himself. That is going to be ever more true. Yeah.
Wow, very profound. Well, thank you very much for that. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Miro, sorry I didn't give you a chance to give much of a word in today, but it's been a really, really interesting discussion. We'll see everyone on the last Thursday of next month. We're just getting a couple of people sort of lined up to see what we can discuss. But thank you very much for taking part. So take care, everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.